A legendary venue, infamous corners, great drivers and cars, and a massive crowd. All the ingredients for a true sports car endurance classic. It's time for Sebring. Daytona International.
But once a year, a 12-hour race makes this unassuming town famous around the world. The town, Sebring. It's a race, but also a happening. Race fans wanting to be linked to a history that stretches back 60 years. A legendary history on the track, but also the atmosphere surrounding it. A day of shattering noise, barbecues, orange blossoms, and motor oil. That is the Sebring experience. 12 hours, day into night. Glaring noontime light softening at sunset. Then, folding into a velvet blackness, the race rushes toward its climax. Sebring isn't just a tough track, it's the tough track. The rough runways tear at your drivetrain. The bumps tear at your nerves. Sebring will demand a toll to be paid, and the price has always been heavy. Who will emerge from the darkness victorious? The Mobil won 12 hours of Sebring, the longest half day in racing, next.
Welcome to Sebring International Raceway in the 64th annual Mobil One 12 Hours of Sebring, fueled by Fresh from Florida. Hi everybody, I'm Greg Creamer, and joining me in the booth is former Sebring 12-hour class winner Calvin Fish. And Cal, as you well know, for a racer just competing at Sebring is bucket list material, but winning here is truly the stuff of dreams.
Well, Sebring is just a very special event, Greg, and it follows an awesome start to the WeatherTech Championship at Daytona, where 24 hours of racing witnessed intense competition on the track, but at Sebring, the toughest opponent may just be the racetrack itself. It's a fun track to drive, but it'll leave you bruised and battered at times. The bumps here will not only rip out the bottom of the race car, but also the hearts of the drivers and the crews who are just trying to survive this intense 12-hour battle. Now, Sebring is the ultimate test, and with four classes trying to coexist today, it'll be an intense dynamic.
Boy, looking forward to it. Sebring may be only a few hours south and west from Daytona in Florida's Lake Country, but Cal, as we look at our Ford track map, the venues are as different as it gets.
Well, Sebring is certainly unique, but it's a fun track to drive. Very challenging, 3.7 miles with 17 turns, renowned for its bumpy nature and at times more like riding a mechanical bull than driving a race car, but breaking it down by the key corners. Turn 1 is super fast, very tricky. Turn 3, recently named Christensen Corner, can see some action. Turn 7, the hairpin, great overtaking spot. And then finally, turn 17, Sunset's Bend, is crazy quick on the entry, but very bumpy on the exit. You just have to try and hang on there.
And that, folks, leads us into our WeatherTech weather update. And you're talking about hanging on there. Well, that might get a little bit more difficult for some of these drivers. Weather right now is actually quite pleasant. Mid-70s, bit of a breeze, but as you can see, some cloud cover, and the forecast and the reports from the track say rain is imminent. Oh boy, it's going to get interesting. Now, before we move forward, let's quickly look back at what was an enthralling season opener at Daytona International Speedway. The Rolex 24 kicked off the season at Daytona with the number 2 ESM Ligier Honda on the outside pole. Ford rejoined the sports car fray with 2 Ford GTs, though both had teething issues.
Early in the day, trouble in the prototype class as the 60 and 2 made contact heading into the chicane. The Delta Wing led but ran out of luck as darkness descended. Contact in turn 1 ended their day.
Later, with last year's winners leaving, contact with the number 4 Corvette dropped them back. Then more trouble at night as the leading number 60 of Mike Shank Racing had engine troubles and retired.
More problems as the reigning series champ took the number 5 behind the wall for the first time in more than 2 years. And last year's Rolex 24-hour winners had an issue with Kyle Larson behind the wheel, into the tires, and there would be no repeat victory.
At the checkers, it was the Tequila Patrón machine taking the overall and prototype class win. In prototype challenge, it was the 85 of JDC Miller Motorsports that prevailed.
GT Le Mans provided the closest finish as the number 3 and number 4 Corvettes battled to the line, with the 4 car taking the win. Finally, in GT Daytona, it was the Magnus Racing Audi taking the first win of 2016.
These first two races of the season are often referred to as the 36 Hours of Florida. The final, and by far the hardest third, is about to begin.
Witnessing one of the most exciting races in the 19-year history of the Speed Classic.
Welcome to the pit lane at the one and only Sebring 12 Hours. This is spring break for racers, and over 80,000 people have been here partying this weekend. But right now, it's time for those racers to rock. With more on the action at the front of the grid is Jamie Howe.
Well, the energy here at Sebring, Justin, has been felt all week long. The nerves and the angst from not just the drivers, but also the crews has been evident. This is the ultimate test of man versus man, man versus machine. And for the second year in a row, Olivier Pla has been able to overcome that early. He's earned the overall pole position in two different cars for two different teams this year for Michael Shank Racing.
Thanks very much, Jamie. And as you see, the Continental Tire starting grid is up at the top of the screen. Hope you found your favorite car and drivers to cheer on at this point. And the field is out on their pace lap. So, and it looks like the lights are out on the pace car. We are looking forward to going racing, Cal.
Well, there's about 25,000 horsepower about to be unleashed here when we see that green flag. The two Honda HPD Ligiers lead this field to green. Then you've got the young American Dane Cameron lines up third, and the Brazilian teammate from Action Express, Christian Fittipaldi, right alongside.
And a huge field comes out of Sunset Bend, one of those infamous corners. Coming up to the green flag, the 12 Hours of Sebring is underway. And right away, Pla jumps to the lead. A big fake to the inside by Durrani. Is he going to go for it?
Oh, that was
close,
tight.
Cal.
So tight there. It is super fast through there, about 120 miles an hour. Cameron now makes a move on Durrani as they get into the brake zone, down into Christensen corner.
Yeah, as soon as that got pinched for Durrani, it gave the opportunity. Dane Cameron pounces that Whelen Engineering Action Express Corvette DP up into second.
And this has given Olivier Pla, our pole sitter, the gap that he needs. He's got the buffer. He can just settle in now. Look at him, just trying to get the debris off those tires. Look at the GT start on screen left.
Coming up, they have a split start. It was a BMW sweep of the front row. And a great run there, but that Scuderia Corsa Ferrari, the new 488, very quick. And then you've got the two yellow Corvettes and one of those new 4 GTs, the number 67, jumping right into the fray.
Oh, they touch.
Oh.
There was a touch there. Westbrook and one of the Corvettes, it may have been Tommy Milner, clip each other coming through turn 3.
Boy, that allowed one of the Porsches to make a move up and around the outside, side by side, Cal, as they sweep now into the hairpin.
Here come those two BMWs. They've looked awfully strong all week long, and it was a sweep at the front row here yesterday. Look at the intensity down into the brake zone, the hairpin turn 7. There's Vilander trying to make a move for Risi.
They were a bit frustrated in qualifying. They said that some of the Continental Tire Sports Car Challenge rubber that went down really upset their car a little bit. They like their race car. Boy, he was thinking about it. A close squeeze play, and Patrick Pellet fending off that Corvette, and Vilander around the outside, Cal.
Wow, we've seen two Corvettes trading paint in the opening lap of this race. Unbelievable. It's a 12-hour battle here at Sebring.
Finally, Vilander backs out of it just a little bit. Maybe he's realizing 12 hours, but wanted to make a move, and that is one of the reasons, Cal, this class, the intensity is fierce. I mean, the entire 10 cars covered by 0.8 of a second.
It was so tight in qualifying. Expect the same all day long. But meanwhile, up at the front, Olivier Pla from the pole has taken off a little bit. Dane Cameron settles into second for Action Express in the Whelen number 31. Durrani, who was sensational at Daytona. What a performance he put on that day to get the victory. He settles now into the third spot.
And Mark Goossens is going to be pleased up into fifth in the Visit Florida Racing Corvette DP as we watch this fierce battle already in GT Le Mans. Patrick Pellet, last year's champion in the class, having a nice start at this one and getting around the Daytona winners in the number 4 Corvette.
You see that final car coming through turn 17. That was Dirk Mueller in the second of the Ford GTs. They're just settling in. They realize it's going to be a long, hard day here. The Ford GTs had a lot of speed at Daytona, but had reliability issues. That was kind of a surprise. Oh, problems here. The 27 car, Dream Racing, new team here. Didn't run at Daytona, and that's set out into the brake zone for Sunset Bend, turn 17.
Yeah, they did come to the Sebring test. They had a little bit of a problematic test, but they got it all sorted out. And we'll see if that car indeed just makes it right down into the pit lane. Fabio Babini is an absolute world-class driver, so maybe some sort of an issue on that car, Cal.
Yeah, we've seen these guys just kind of work through the motions of a Sebring race week, and as you said, Greg, it's a unique place, and we had a warm-up this morning, had a car caught on fire, didn't see the start here today, so it just keeps throwing these kind of little obstacles at you. You just got to deal with them. Those are the bumps in the road, as we mentioned, as to one of the keys to victory here today.
Boy, and look at this battle here. The number 4 all over in this scrap here. Tommy Milner is working hard. Here are the keys to victory, Cal. The WeatherTech keys to victory starts with manage the bumps in the road, as you've talked about.
Well, it's not just the track itself, but it's the nuances of the race. Then pick your battles. The speed of the GTD cars this year is unbelievable. This GT3 machinery, ABS, traction control, they're really tough to pass for all of the faster classes. Then survive the storm. Inclement weather is anticipated here today in Sebring.
And I would think pick your battles isn't just which cars and what classes, but also when. 3 minutes into a 12-hour race, I think everybody's now calming down a bit.
Yeah, I think everyone was pumped up, but
sure.
I was really surprised to see how aggressive Vilander was. I was surprised to see Westbrook and Antonio Garcia, who were teammates for the 90 car just a couple of seasons ago, trading paint on that opening lap.
Having a talk with the Reese team engineer, Rick Mayer, he said the thing that sets Tony Vilander apart, they're all very fast drivers. He said his pace in traffic and his willingness to be aggressive there is what sets him apart. And he was showing it right off as we go on board.
Well, he's from Finland, so he's got great car control. So I think when the tires were not totally up to temperature, he was trying to make some moves. Now things settled down. Olivier Pla, he had that gap over Dane Cameron in qualifying. He's sort of like cementing that in the race right now. So Cameron should come under attack by Pippo Durrani here. They're all in the prototype class, but different car configurations, Greg. You got the two P2 cars running first and second, and then the Daytona prototypes running in the second, third, and fifth spot.
Yeah, absolutely, and they make their speed in different ways. That's what the change up here. And here we go. Boy, that battle really not lightening up too much. Back for the top 5 in GT Le Mans early in the race here at Sebring. We'll be back. Please stay with us.
You said everybody says bumpy.
You go to Sebring, it's the most bumpiest track in the world.
Bumpy?
It just rattles and shakes every ounce of the car.
Bumpy.
Bumpy, very bumpy. An all-out sort of bruiser fight. Exhausting.
Got to manage them. That's what we've been talking about, isn't it? It is something else, this track. I mean, in ways, the ultimate challenge, and one of the reasons that a lot of teams come here and test preseason, because if something's going to fail, Sebring will find it for you.
It really will. There's the big bumps, like down here through turn 17, that Pla, our pole sitter and leader right now, is going to encounter, but the rest of the track, it's like being in a paint shaker, Greg. I mean, it just rips you to pieces.
And they still use these old taxiways, and of course, then there's the permanent paved part of the track, but it too has some unique bumps, a lot of them right in tricky braking zones and the like, so you've really got to be on your game here. Pla certainly is, as he's taken that number 60 Tire King to Mike Shank Racing. Olivier out to a nice lead here. However, Cal, their run to that pole was anything but smooth.
Well, we saw the drama at the end of last year at Petit with all of the crashes. We'll look at this in night practice here on Thursday. Hard to see in the middle of the headlights, but John Pugh behind the wheel loses control of the 60 machine. I have to assume that something is broken on the car, because even a driver mistake wouldn't be that dramatic. They rebuilt the car. We're up to like 3-4 a.m., got the car back on the track. Pla had a little incident the next morning in practice, more damage, but then he repays the team by putting that car on the pole. And second consecutive Sebring overall pole win for Olivier Pla.
And that's when you realize it's truly a team sport. And Jamie, Mike Shank's got a good one.
He sure does, and his crew has been to work. They've worked overnight. These guys are tired, I know. What concerns do you have about the car now the green flag is falling?
the Tire Kingdom car, Molly Blonde, really good right now. I don't have any concerns about the car itself. What I have concerns about is the rain coming. And we had a lot of problems with this car in the rain at Petit Le Mans last year, and that's my biggest concern. We're going to do some things when we get to the pit stops if it starts raining to make it better, but to have a new rain tire from that event to this one, and we haven't run it yet. We don't got it, but we don't got a real fast car right now.
You mentioned the changes you made since Petit. What do those include to get ready for wet?
Well, for a couple things, we changed our ride quality program on our shock program on the car, and it's a lot better now. Well, unfortunately, had a bad thing happen on Thursday, but we recovered that over that. The guys worked unbelievably hard until 4 in the morning. Got some sleep last night, and we're just going to be leading for right now.
Heroic effort. Thank you.
It really was a heroic effort, what they had to put in, as you alluded to, then that little extra incident just to give them a little something else to focus on. But Pla, when you think about the rain that's coming, this is a really smart thing for him to do, is to build a big margin right now, to have a little buffer.
There is, and with the rain impending, there's a lot of teams who chose to change their starting driver. Your qualifying driver is supposed to start the race, but some teams thought about the rain coming. Now, in the PC and GTD classes, you got the Pro-Am guys, the silver-rated drivers, who don't have the experience to deal with these really tricky race conditions if we do see some rain. So they're trying to get those guys in first, get their laps in, their minimum drive time, which is 3 hours here to score points, get those hours out of the way while the track is still good. So we really saw a change up in strategy overnight to this morning's warm-up and then the race itself.
Yeah, literally a few of the teams that had qualified put the other driver in, which means they had to start at the back, but they just felt a bit better about that.
Well, you got to think about the 12-hour. It's a long, long day here, and you got to think about the overall strategy. When it's an endurance race, you typically see the fast guy in. They want to start at the front end, clear some of the traffic, be out of the kind of the problems and the intensity of the first opening laps here at Sebring. But then when you think about the big picture of the race, what is best for our strategy? Get those hours knocked out, get the silver hours knocked out with the silver-rated drivers, and then you can get your pros in at the end and finish off the deal.
Yeah, Calvin, you know how we always talk about the team strategizing for themselves? We also make special mention of that they monitor what the other teams are doing. I've just been talking with Corvette, and I said, how do you anticipate what's coming? What can you do? And he said, well, you know, we know really, but we don't have enough data with all these new cars, but go back to Petit Le Mans last year. Porsche were extraordinarily fast, but they did have an aero advantage, so we don't know how they'll run now with the more equalized aero. But he said, also remember, we are probably looking, if the weather report is right, at a potential red flag situation at some point, which would stop the field. And he said, we have to back that into our equation as well. So he said there's an enormous amount of metrics going, a lot of analysis, but in the end, they've got to go as fast as they can right now and get ready to put those Michelin wets on when the time comes.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on, JB, and I think there's a very different strategy for Prototype and GTLM where they're all-pro driver lineups, and when you got this minimum drive time consideration in PC and GTD, because those guys are having to think, we've got to get those hours knocked out. For Prototype and GTLM, they're thinking track position, maintain track position, be at the front in case you get a red flag, and this race is shortened at some point today.
Yeah, two different dynamics for sure. This is a look at the battle going on in GTD right now, and Jeff Siegel, this is the first race for Scuderia Corsa with the new 488, and he absolutely was stunning in qualifying, putting that car in pole, and Jerome Bleekemolen chasing right now. Then third is the car that won it last year, the number 23 Team Seattle Alex Job Racing entry, and pretty interesting what we've been seeing unfold here. And getting back to that GT Le Mans story that Justin was talking about, the new aero. Those cars have much different aero than they had last year, as the number 3 Corvette making a nice move. Garcia on young Daniel Serra and pulls into the 3rd spot in GT Le Mans, but it's different aero on those cars. If it rains, it's going to really give people a bit of more information that they just don't have, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. The cars have changed in terms of the spec for this year. These GT Le Mans cars that we're looking at right now, our leader Bill Orban in the BMW M6, celebrating 100 years, of course, of BMW's history. But, you know, you look at the back end of that car, massive Venturi tunnels there, a lot of downforce created, but I think the biggest difference this year, Greg, is in GTD. Those cars are now full GT3 spec, all of the aero aids, all of the electronic aids, The performance is unbelievable, and we talk about playing nice together as one of the keys to victory. That's the real tricky part. Talking to the GTLM drivers, they said those GTD cars are so fast, they really take all the way down into the apex of the corners on the brakes with their ABS systems. We can sometimes take 2 laps to clear traffic. That's where the patience has to come in.
Bill Oberlin, talking to him about these cars at the test, he said, you know, the wheelbase itself is about 12 inches longer, which is substantial. He said, but with the overhangs and the splitters and the wings, he said the car is over 2 feet longer than the Z4 used to be. He said, one, that creates issues in pit space, but also, he said, when we get to tighter tracks, he said, that's going to really play a role. But he said, on an open track like this and at Daytona, the stability of that thing and the better front-end grip they have, huge.
And it's also easier to drive. I mean, you're going through these fast corners here like this one he's coming into now, turn 17, with that longer wheelbase, which means the distance between the front and rear wheels, of course, that's what we're talking about. It's just it settles the car down. Before that Z4 they were driving, it was a shorter wheelbase. It was really twitchy. You're having to fight the car through those bumps. This day, you look at him behind the wheel, he's really controlled. Just a quick glance in the mirror there, look for his teammate John Edwards, who sits just a couple of seconds back right now, but the car looks really settled there. It's not going to be as good in fast change directions. The next area of the racetrack here, 3, 4, and 5. The Z4 would be a little bit quicker through here because it would change direction a little bit better.
And they said what this car eliminated was what they had fondly called for the Z4 is the Z4 cha-chas. When they'd get on the brake, even in a straight line, it would pin the nose so hard with that short wheelbase. You literally get the back end dancing on you. Bill Oberlin leading in GT Le Mans. Overall right now, Olivier Pla continuing to lead here at the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. A beautiful drive through Lake Country, through the smell of the orange blossoms, and then to the smell of racing sports cars, to be specific. We're back at the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring, and Jeff Siegel continues to lead in the GT Daytona category. But Cal, the battle has been fierce. Jerome Bleekemolen has actually shown the nose a couple of times while we were in break. Had Jeff run just a smidge wide up into Cunningham Corner, turn 10, with Jerome really coming up the inside. It's been great stuff.
It really is, and what a debut for that team with the new 488. There's turbocharged engines now in the GTD category. This Ferrari is a turbocharged engine. The BMW that sits in the 4 spot, just see it in the background there. Jens Klinkmann, the German, behind the wheel of the 96 machine. You see him just cross the stripe. Turbocharged engines, but the series has done a brilliant job in what we call the balance of performance, making sure all of these cars are pretty close in terms of their performance on the racetrack.
It was funny when I was talking to Jeff at the test. He said, you know, I always love to get into a race car. He said, but after one session in that 488, he said I was probably hounding the team going, okay, can I get back in now? How about now? How about now? He said it really is an amazing car.
Yeah, I spoke to him and his teammate Alessandro Balzan as well. Christina Nielsen obviously joining that pair for this race here today, and they just said, wow, what a car. It just does everything a little bit better, and the old car wasn't bad. So certainly going to be a big shot in the arm for that team as they go for a championship.
Yeah, Christina has to be very excited, coming so close to the championship last year, ending up second in that one, and now having this great weapon. I mean, after all, the team did take Townsend Bell and Bill Spiegler to the championship last year, so it's a great program.
It's a great program, great people involved. Giacomo Mattioli kind of leads that group. They've got Eric Bachelot now kind of as the team director. Stefan Johansson is involved, so some really good key people in place.
Riding on board here right now with the number 22 WeatherTech Porsche from Alex Job Racing. And I alluded to the fact there was a Sebring Hall of Fame induction ceremony here, and Alex Job and Alex Job Racing inducted the only 10-time class winners here at Sebring. A pretty remarkable story. You alluded to the fact Tom Christensen getting a corner named after him here. That's because he was inducted as well. Most overall wins ever here at Sebring with 6. Just a great day for all of the inductees. Just a fabulous ceremony. Derek Bell hosting it.
Yeah, I wish we could have been there. It was superb. Alex Job Racing, though, 70 wins in sports car competition, a couple of 24-hour class wins, 10 at Sebring, as you mentioned, 48 poles, 5 championships. They're going to be really tough. They've got 2 really strong driver lineups this year, Greg. The cars are quick. Porsche really have come out with a great car this year.
Absolutely right. By the way, I want to say a big hello to Trey Stevenson. We're sure he's watching. He was inducted, the longtime president and general manager here at Sebring, and our friend Sam Posey, 1975 winner in the BMW, in the first win for BMW Motorsport, inducted as well, along with the Tampa Trib sports editor for many years, Tom McEver. Absolutely just a great day and a great evening.
Some class people, and great to see them honored in the right way. And Sebring is a special place that's meant a lot to those people.
Olivier Pla, you can see he's built the margin up. Now, Dane Cameron has been able to open up a bit of a gap over Pippo Durrani in the Daytona winning '2 Tequila Patrón ESM Ligier Honda. I wonder, that was maybe more a function of traffic than anything. Once you lose the momentum in these P2 cars, those big V8s and the DPs really help you in traffic.
They really do. I mean, it just makes managing the traffic in terms of being slow a little bit. You don't have the momentum that the P2 is looking for. But remember, these Honda-powered engines have been boosted from 2.8 liter to 3.5 for this year. We saw that debuted at Daytona to great effect, taking the win there. That really helps that. But talking to Dane this week, he said the car is really good on the long runs. He said driving it on the edge in qualifying was tough. As you can see, they only lined up 3rd and 4th. But he said both Action Express cars are really good on the longer runs here. But again, that could all go out of the window when we get to seeing any rain here today.
Yeah, that just changes the dynamic so furiously. What I understand with the new HPD engine in those cars, they said, you know, it has a little bit more power, but the real improvement is drivability. They said the other engine was like a two-stroke motorcycle engine. Nothing, bam, and it would just upset the platform because it came in so hard.
Yeah, it was like a light switch, kind of an on-off switch, and they did a lot of work after the test at Daytona early in the year. They went to Palm Beach International Raceway, spent a solid day just working on that, on the electronics, with the help of HPD, Honda Performance Development, and they came out with a really great engine that has great drivability. It's one thing to have power, but you got to be able to use it, put it to the ground.
I tell you, Mark Gusens must be pretty pleased right now with the number 90 Visit Florida car right now. They have been chasing a problem. I think you said when we were talking earlier, it was even in the preseason with traction control. The other side of the coin is Ryan D'Alto. He said the setup that he and Mark like in this car is about as 180-degree different than the one that Richard Westbrook, which was the prime setup on the car, had. He said, so we've just kind of been learning with the team on a few of these programs. That third at Daytona, they said, we didn't have speed. We were thrilled with those third-place points.
Yeah, it was great points, kind of the team's best result there at Daytona, and they've kind of changed the driver lineup. They had Michael Valiente and Richard Westbrook last year, who came so close to a championship with a couple of victories and led most of the summer until Petit, when it all went away from them in the rain there. But you're right. I mean, Westy has a very specific way he likes to drive the car. He really drives the car deep in on the brakes, and that was really hard for Michael Valiente to kind of compromise and work with. And I think with Ricky Cameron, who's Dane Cameron's dad, who's he works with the 90 car as their engineer, he's really just got to adjust to the drivers he has this year. They're going to like a different subtlety in the race car, different nuance, and you've just got to get the setup right. That takes time. It takes miles.
By the way, there is the car leading from pole in the prototype challenge category. That's the personal security consultant's PR1 Matheson Motorsports entry, pole sitter Tom Kimber, and we should point out that the fastest time set in qualifying did go to Colin Brown in the number 54 Core Autosport machine. However, they decided to make one of those changes we talked about, put Jonathan Bennett in the car, so they moved to the back. But these cars this year are now, they've got this new electronics Motec management system on the cars, and it's debuting here. So there's a little bit of inconsistency, I think.
Yeah, I think some of the teams had a bit more time to develop it. They actually had a special test session on Tuesday here this week for the teams who hadn't got previous experience with the new electronics. It gives the teams real-time data, telemetry back to the pit lane. It's got great traction control, so it should be a big advantage. We saw the PC cars, oh, that was tight there. You get into the inside, you suddenly hit one of those bumps, you can't really hold your line, so you've got to sort of like give yourself a little buffer there in those type of situations. But getting back to the new electronics, it should help in the rain, but these teams haven't tried it in the rain yet.
It's a very good point, but they were saying for the amateur drivers of that Pro-Am equation, it was going to be a huge help. Right now, when we look at GT Le Mans, the Porsche's Justin Bell running a little bit further back in the pack than we're used to.
But what a start for them. Let's just think back what happened at the start of the race. Here's the Porsche pits right now. You can see they did not get the 912 away from the grid until literally everyone else had cleared the pit lane. But I spoke to the Porsche engineers and they went, you know what, it really isn't a factor. We're just worried about it, you know, keeping running for the rest of the race. But as you just said, the Porsche has just run the 9:12, the fastest lap of the race. The sentiment inside the team is more that, you know what, they're not going to take any crazy chances. They're just going to run fast. They've got to get through traffic. All those GTLM cars are fast, Calvin, aren't they? So it's not an easy pickings to get to the front. The pit stops are about to cycle through in the next, you know, 20 minutes or so. But interesting enough, if you could take a look down here, I don't know if I'm on air, but these are the slick tires that obviously the Michelin that are still on deck here for Porsche. And over here with Core, they're going to put bedded in slicks, and that's probably in part, Greg, due to the fact that if they're not sure they're running from the back, they've got to keep the pace. They can't lose any time getting tires up to speed. So different strategies down here in the pits.
And I think also with the fact you've got John Bennett, who's one of the silver graded drivers, probably better to put him on scuffs where he's not out there in race traffic dealing with what we call sticker tires. They've still got that mold release on them. You see the shiny nature of the Porsche tires there that Justin was pointing to, whereas the scuff tires, they've just done a couple of 3 laps, just knock the edge off, and that brings them up to speed a little bit quicker. So for John Bennett, he'll be more in his comfort zone with those tires going on the 54 machine.
As you said, the plan, getting those AM drivers as much track time for that minimum drive time requirement in the dry as possible. There's the number 912 of Frederick Makovecki on the move.
Prototype class. Technology meets speed. 7 manufacturers: Ford, Chevy, Delta Wing, Honda, Nissan, Mazda, BMW. Defining the laws of physics. Advancing automobiles to exceed speeds of 200 miles per hour. With one goal in mind.
And there is your leader overall and leader in that prototype class, Olivier Pla, continuing to run strongly here at the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. And that, of course, is the Tire Kingdom Mike Shank Racing, Ligier Honda. And what a run he is putting in, Cal. I mean, he has opened up now almost a 4-second margin back to Dane Cameron.
Yeah, they've all been going through traffic a little bit, but certainly we expected Olivier Pla and probably Durrani to go with him. Durrani's run a fast lap, just a 10th off of Pla right now, but hasn't dealt with the traffic quite so quickly. Dane Cameron, brilliant start, of course, still runs in the second spot. Christian Fittipaldi is now running very, very fast lap times in the number 4, the Action Express car that obviously won here last year.
And this battle continues to rage here. Top 3 in GT Daytona with some of the prototype challenge traffic coming up and working its way through. Then that little bit of a gap back to Jens Klingman, who's a BMW junior factory driver in the Turner Motorsports IG Rewards Club, number 96. Very stout in qualifying.
Yeah, he's a real stud. He was actually kind of tabbed as a DTM reserve driver when I was over there with watching the DTM action a couple of years ago. He was always there in the BMW camp, so kind of looking for his opportunity. But he's over here this year full time, and that's really showing the emphasis that some of these manufacturers are now putting on this GTD class by providing these factory drivers to the teams who are competing.
You see that little feint by Bleekemolen going, no, you're not coming up inside me here. That'd cost me too much time. You go by me when I want you to go by me.
Yeah, you just have to play nice together, he said, one of the keys to victory. And look at that, he's a little bit slow through there. Looks like Farnbacher's got a bit of a run on him. He's all over the back of that Viper right now for the second position.
He sure is, coming up into Tower Turn, one of the long-standing legendary corners here. See what kind of a drive. He picked that throttle up pretty early, Farnbacher did.
Yeah, he really did. It looks like the Porsche is working a little bit better right now. Siegel there, you can see just as they're open the door there and clear the way for the traffic to come through. Saw a big incident here in the 2-day test with Richard Westbrook going inside, I think it was John Potter behind the wheel of the Magnus racing machine. They had huge moment there, big damage to the Ford in testing. So that is a really tricky part of the racetrack. It's really quick through there, about 140 miles an hour on the entry to those corners.
That's where you're talking about the patience that you have to employ. It's so counterintuitive, obviously, for somebody who just wants to go fast, but you start knocking little bits. Even these GTD cars, you know, they have the little winglets and the little dive planes. You knock those off, it just upsets the handling. Go through tires, more time in the pits, and that's not a winning combination.
It isn't, and you would think you'd get into a rhythm of one of these races, knowing the habits of the drivers, what they're doing. The problem in endurance racing, the drivers are constantly changing. So what you could see one moment, 5 minutes later you come up on the same car, there's a different driver behind the wheel. They may do something totally different. You're on your toes for 12 hours here at Sebring, that's for sure.
That's the dynamic, that high-speed chess match we always talk about multi-class sports car endurance racing. As we go back looking at GT Le Mans, the two BMWs continuing to hold on, but Antonio Garcia has upped the ante just a bit.
Yeah, he really has. He certainly, he's menacing. I mean, he is one of the bullets in GTLM, certainly a stout competitor. Ran with Aston Martin for many years, and then Corvette were fortunate enough to get his signature on a contract, and they really believe he is the team leader. All of those guys are super quick, don't get me wrong, but Antonio just has that little edge when it's needed.
Yeah, he's something special. A couple of years ago, that win that he literally held on to a somewhat evil car at Circuit of the Americas. I asked Doug Fee, and I said, was that not one of the most brilliant drives I've ever seen? And Fee said, that's exactly why we hired him.
Yeah, and look at the finish we saw at Daytona.
Yeah.
When he chased down Ollie Gavin and he got the lead for a moment, had a little slip there in turn one, had to give it back, but right now he's all over the bumper of that M6 driven by John Edwards. Oberlin's still a couple of seconds down the road, but this is a battle for second we're looking at.
And you can see Edwards concerned, he went to protect, but we've also got the number 70 prototype Mazda in the hands of Tom Long right now, right in that mix. And I'll tell you, it's nice to see. You see the lights flashing on that Mazda, and they had been running up in the 5th spot, sitting 6th right now. And these Mazdas, a very different package than what they ran last year, and they are in the fight.
Yeah, very much so. They went with the diesel technology there for a couple of years with the Mazda entries and certainly provided great entertainment for everyone. But this year they've got that AER engine. It's really got a lot of speed, and they've got some great drivers, great team. They've really refined that team. John Doonan from Mazda has really put together a great group, and that car is quick. They're definitely in the mix this year for some victories, if not podiums.
There is Richard Westbrook in the number 67 Ford GT, chasing Daniel Serra in the red 68 Scuderia Corsa Ferrari. That is for 4th. We'll be right back to Sebring. Here are your 4 class leaders. The beautiful Chateau Alain Hotel right outside of the hairpin. One of the few, if any, prime property hotels right on a race circuit corner. Certainly here in North America, an absolutely great property. Great to have you back with us here at the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. And while we were in break, well, guess what? We had some pit stops that unfolded and are leading to actually ducking into the pit lane. And it looked to me certainly like the Action Express Wheel and Engineering boys uncorked a quick stop and made up some of that time on Olivier Pla. But now that puts this young man, the star of Daytona in the Rolex 24, Pippo Durrani, into the lead.
It does, and I think the other teams were just being a bit more conservative because Pippo has done 2 more laps than an identical machine essentially with Mike Shank Racing. So what you don't want to do is run out, obviously, first hour of this race. So they're going to be more conservative. You have the reconnaissance lap to encounter as well. So getting an accurate mileage, but certainly ESM have done a great job there with Durrani in terms of stretching his fuel load a little bit longer. Now as he runs down pit lane, it'll be interesting to see with those hot tire laps that he put together, how they will compare with the cars that have made their pit stop, now out there on full tank of fuel, how the comparison is as to whether he can get into that mix with both the 60 and the 31 that ran 1-2 prior to this pit stop.
Yeah, and Fittipaldi in the number 5 Mustang sampling entry, Goosens in the 90 Visit Florida, they have all pitted as well. So this is going to be interesting. The ESM Extreme Speed Motorsports team, they want to uncork a great stop here and see how that plays out. Great camera work here as we open up to see what's coming, and here comes Pla.
Here comes Pla. He's coming down this front straightaway. So even Durrani running a couple more laps. You can see him now exiting his pit box as the leaders flash by here. So it looks like the 60 car and the 31 have actually had a net gain over Durrani, who was really close to Dane Cameron, about a 2.5 seconds behind when they made those pit stops. And the 5 car goes through as well. So even though they stretched the fuel a little bit, maybe he got some traffic on those 2 laps that he stayed out for. Here we see the 10 car. They have just been unbelievable over the last few seasons in terms of pit lane execution, top of their game every week.
Rubens Barrichello, no less, behind the wheel of that car again. He also made an appearance at Daytona. Now, we talked at the top of the show how Ford has rejoined racing in a huge way with a factory Ford GT program, and I think Justin Bell is with Ford's Mr. Parasak.
Yes. Dave, great to have you here. You are global performance director for Ford, but right now it's about Central Florida and you guys putting some more miles under the belt because you've had the big ones. You've got to prepare for the biggest. How does this race fit into that schedule?
Well, you know, coming out of Daytona, we had our issues, right? And so the team went back and we addressed every one of them. Today's all about proving the durability of this machine. You know, we need, as you say, to prove ourselves before we get to Le Mans. I hope it rains today. I hope we get everything thrown at us. This track beats up cars more than any track. So this really is a preparation for Le Mans. We're ready.
And of course, before Le Mans, you've got to obviously put in quite a lot of testing. You've got to race at Silverstone. You're gaining data the whole time. But it's definitely a family affair. We've seen the Ford family here in person at every single race and debut of this car so far. And there's a huge performance and competitive spirit. You need that carrying this energy forward.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, it's great having a Ford family with us. We work at Ford Motor Company, but we work for a family. And, you know, going back to Le Mans is all about our history, but it's also to do something special for the Ford family.
So you say everything's going to get thrown at you here. You've got the first round of pit stops coming up. Everyone's analyzing it closely. If it rains, your cars have shown in test they actually drive quite well, don't they?
Yeah, the car actually performs really well in the rain. We get some really good downforce out of the car, and so the drivers feel comfortable in the rain as well. But again, I hope it does rain. We need to put this thing through everything that we can before we get to Le Mans. Chances at Le Mans, you know better than anybody, it's probably going to rain.
Probably going to rain. It'll also be a great time for you to test out that new wet weather Ford gear. You need to go put it on. Okay. All right, guys, back to you.
Boy, you know what? It is our good fortune that Enzo Ferrari was such an irascible character, because when Henry Ford wanted to buy Ferrari and Enzo refuted him heavily, that forced Henry Ford to say, you know what, then we'll go racing, and the Ford GT program was born.
And it's great to see it back. I mean, the passion that this car has really kindled in the sports car fans' interest is unbelievable. I mean, there is just so much interest. The car is so cool looking. They got great drivers, a great team with Chip Ganassi Racing to performing here in the IMSA Championship, the WeatherTech Championship, as well as in the Global World Endurance Championship. 4 cars will be campaigning this year, 4 at Le Mans, so they've got a big attack going on. They want to get that victory. It's big.
That's a huge program there. You see our Daytona pole sitter in the prototype challenge class, Johnny Molim's car in pit lane. Looks like a bit of an extended stop. And our Daytona winner in pit lane as well, the number 85 GDC Miller Motorsports entry. What a Cinderella story that was. And they have completed their stop and running, actually pitted from the lead, and Molim had been second. So looks like they're going to resume in station here as we go back and pick up. This is a great story, Cal. Nicola Manassian in the number 81, and that is an Oracle Nissan out front.
Well, we talk about balance of performance in terms of speed, but also the fuel mileage that the cars get. There really isn't a lot of data on this car. First time we've seen it in competition here, and they did the test and stuff, but certainly you can see they are stretching their mileage a good 3 laps further than everyone else. GTLM leaders starting to pit. Jamie?
That's right, it's the number 100 from BMW Team RLL first in. Bill will stay behind the wheel of this car. Bill's in the 25. Anyway, I was talking to Jay O'Connell about this car, and it's actually a brand new car from 24 Hours of Daytona. If you remember, they had the brake rotor explode, and there was so much damage that they sent that car back to Munich, got a new car, and it was damaged in shipping. So this turned its first wheels on Tuesday. It was a very clean pit stop, 4 new Michelin tires.
Yeah, Lucas Rowe had the brake rotor explode going down into turn 1 at Daytona. Huge crash took him out of the action there, and sometimes you just got to say there's too much damage on this machine to get it in good shape for Sebring, where it's going to be brutal anyway. But you can see there, wait, is that the 4 car, I think?
It is.
The 4 cars leaped around, so that was a great start by Corvette Racing.
Well, they do get that done in the pit lane. They do it incredibly well. And Antonio Garcia, he was getting a bit antsy and maybe a little angry, I think, behind that 100 car. Oh, that was close.
That was really close. You can see the language there. I thought Blau was going to set up for that fast left-hand sweeper. And that's tough because the guy on the outside, he needs to turn in. You're kind of putting him in no man's land. You got to be careful. You can't afford to be making those moves consistently over 12 hours here. It will bite you eventually.
Absolutely. As I was saying with Garcia, he wanted by Edwards in a hurry. He was watching Arbelin drive away. So he elected to stay out and take advantage here. We're going to step away as the battle continues. That's Sebring. Welcome back to Sebring. Problems already, maybe the first of the victims of the legendary bumps here at the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. The number 33, that is the Viper of a gentleman who's awfully quick. Here's Jerome Bleekemolen, and he is limping around, Cal. We're getting reports it might be something gearbox related. Let's listen.
Something in the drivetrain, whether it's internally in the gearbox or something with the driveline itself. But this team came so close to victory last year, Greg, with like the final 5 minutes of the race when they hold the radiator and eventually just overheated it, turned it into a piece of molten metal until they're trying to get into the checkered flag. But it's hurt Ben Keating. It hurt him last year. Remember a couple of years ago he had the massive fire in the opening laps of the race, and again in the first hour here with them leading the class. Problems for Bleekemolen and his teammate.
No question about the pace of that car, certainly. Now this group coming up. It's the GT Le Mans field. Look at Jerome, the consummate pro, giving them a wide berth through those very quick Le Mans curves and onto this Ullman straight here. That was through the Bishop Bend where he gave them a lot of room as they go through. In this class, the 911 and 912 Porsches are running 1-2, having, I think, yet to have stopped at this point. Milner, Garcia, that's third and fourth.
Yeah, everyone's kind of going through their first pit stop cycle. The Porsche, I think, we're just on pit lanes. We'll wait for time and scoring to cycle through here. The BMWs, you can see, Oberlin had stretched the gap on John Edwards a little bit in the opening hour. Then Garcia was putting the pressure on the 100, but they come out after their pit stops very close. But the Corvettes, great execution on pit lane. They are now at the front of this pack, running 1-2. Milner, the 4-car, leads Garcia. Now Dirk Werner behind the wheel of the 25 machine, taking over from Bill Oberlin, our pole sitter, then John Edwards. So Porsche stretched their fuel mileage and did lead a lap there.
Interesting, though, you talk about Corvette and the execution of that Corvette racing team. I think Milner was back in about 8th when they made that stop. So did they do a short fill, something like that? Because it sure played the track position game perfectly.
I think sometimes it's just the traffic, Greg. How if you get a good clean lap when you're coming in and able to execute your maximum potential in lap time if the others are in traffic, because I don't think at this stage of the game you'd be playing games in terms of getting that track position. Maybe hour 9-10 with weather on its way, you may want to get that track position. But right now,
a bit of a moment there. That's the number 11. That is the change racing entry of our 2015 GTD champs. Townsend Bell and Bill Sweedler among the drivers, and a bit of an issue there, Cal. It looked like it must have just been a quick spin. Or maybe a problem. They're not getting back to speed in any hurry, Bill, isn't it?
Talk about change racing. It's all changed for Bill Sweedler and Townsend Bell. With Dara Motorsport, they competed with at Daytona in the Lamborghini Huracan. We see Bill just turn around there on the exit of the hairpin turn and see when that car was last on pit lane. Cold tires potentially.
He was able to get it going, Cal, but then just, he's pulling off. So I wonder if something broke that caused the spin. You can see Sweedler's hands, just threw his hands up in the air a little bit in frustration.
Sweedler started the race. Maybe, after the spin, if you try and spin it around, it's really easy to break a half shaft or something, have a clutch issue.
And that's going to promote a full course caution. And Cal, after he had spun, when he started moving again, that car had a huge lurch when it launched. Maybe that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, you got to be careful. I mean, you can get in a bit of a panic mode. You're trying to get out of the way in terms of traffic coming through the corner. You're losing time. You just want to spin it around. And with hot tires, it can really transfer a lot of energy into that drive line.
And you saw Jerome Bleekemolen able to get the number 33 Gas Monkey Garage Viper down into pit lane as well. With the caution coming out, we're going to step away for just a moment here. Stay with us.
GTLM class. Battling for dominance. Finesse. Style. Thrill. Speed. Ferrari, Porsche, BMW, Corvette, Ford. Racing at its finest.
Under our first full course caution here at the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring for 2016. Welcome back, everybody. And the field now everybody being gathered up behind the pace car. We've already had a number of pit stops, and once they open the pit lane, I would think we're going to see a lot of teams making the dive into pit lane. And of course, we had that explainer about the GT Le Mans class. Well, that's one of the few classes, the only class really, that has an open tire battle. And virtually everybody in that class has chosen to run on Michelin's. And Jamie, I think there's a good reason for that, isn't there?
I'm sure there is, Greg. Scott Clark is the Chief Operating Officer for Michelin North America. And Greg was just mentioning how all the GTLM teams have chosen Michelin. Why is that?
Well, Jamie, it's not by accident. You know, the GT Le Mans class is the only class in the WeatherTech series where the teams can choose what tire to run on. They choose Michelin, and we believe it's because of the relationships we have with the teams, but also the technology and the innovation that we bring to give them the best performance possible. And so we're very proud to be the exclusive supplier for all the GT Le Mans teams.
Now, it's not only here that you race, you also race in the FIA World Endurance Championship, Formula E, do some rally racing. What do the consumers gain from all of your racing experience?
Well, the benefit for the consumer, for the folks driving on the street, is really we're able to learn, and that's why we race. It's not about marketing, it's about trying new things, learning in the most extreme conditions like here at Sebring, and then applying that learning to make better tires for the street, tires that last longer, are safer for consumers, and that's really what we're all about, and that's why we're here.
One thing that's on the horizon right now is rain. How prepared are these teams with the rain tires?
Well, if you followed this series, you know that when it comes to rain, Michelin performance really stands out. So I think everyone's very ready for the rain. We've got a great rain tire, just like we have on the street, so we're ready.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can see the back of the 33 here. What a great paint job. Gas Monkey Garage all over it. But they have a problem, as you said correctly. They were the first car to go down with some problem on the track, and they have just replaced the rear right drive shaft. You saw Jerome Bleekmolen, one of the stars of this category in GTD. He brought it home. This car is so strong, isn't it, guys, when it runs well. This is an unforeseen problem, but we talk about it. We talked about it in the Continental race yesterday. This track is punishing. This first opening 45 minutes, 50 minutes round Sebring is probably like 4 hours at Daytona in terms of demands on the car. So unfortunate to see the Soul Viper, which is normally so strong in this category, already beached, but they'll get it back out there, and those awful racing words, there's a lot of miles to go.
We said, JB, this racetrack will break your heart, and has done it several times to Ben Keating and that group. So they'll keep battling as a long championship. Yeah, the big endurance events, Greg, you want that victory. You want to win Daytona. You want to win Sebring, but you still have to think about the championship. Points is important.
And it must be doubly painful, obviously, because that Viper is so well suited to this track. It always goes well here. You've got a fast car, and then you have struggles to number 27. And as the Dream Racing entry had a bit of a problem earlier, looks like another one has cropped up, already under caution, so it might just be extended a little bit. With that, we're going to take a quick break. We will be back with more from Sebring.